Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into something that is just totally fascinating: the crazy psychological duality of how we name, categorize, and actually interact with color. I mean, think about it. Color surrounds us every single waking second of our lives, right? From the moment you check your glaring phone screen in the morning to the painted walls of your living room at night. But the way our brains process and define all this visual information, it spans completely opposite ends of the spectrum. On one hand, you've got cold, hard mathematical data. And on the other, deeply rooted human emotion, weird history, and incredibly vivid storytelling. So let's just jump right into this.
To kick things off, I want you to really think about this. What is the actual difference between a random string of characters like hashtag F0F8FF and the phrase dead salmon? At their absolute core, both of these are simply identifiers. They're just labels for a very specific shade of color. But the way we react to them couldn't be more different. One is this completely sterile digital code representing a pale blue. The other, it's a highly evocative, maybe even slightly off-putting, name for a paint that immediately forces you to picture something physical in your mind.
And honestly, that hits the nail right on the head for what we're talking about today. See, while a computer needs a strict mathematical, alphanumeric value to process a hue and spit it out on your screen, we as humans experience color as something else entirely. For us, color is incredibly tactile. It's atmospheric, it triggers old memories, it completely shifts our daily moods, and it wraps around our physical experiences in a way that computer code just literally cannot capture. Let's look at how we actually built languages for both of these very different worlds.
Let's start over in the digital realm. Web developers and machines, they require absolute, pure mathematical precision. You can't just tell a web browser to make a button kind of a nice happy blue, you know? A computer doesn't understand happy. It needs an exact, pinpointed coordinate in a massive color space, so it can render that exact same shade across the billions of smartphones and monitors all over the planet.
It's actually super fascinating how early web pioneers tried to bridge this gap between rigid machine logic and messy human language. When they created the W3C CSS extended color keywords, they essentially built a universal digital standard that mapped human-friendly words directly to rigid hex codes. So if a developer types in a blanched almond, the browser instantly knows, okay, I need to render exactly hashtag FFEBCD. It's a brilliant, if kind of robotic, way to force subjective colors into an objective, standardized little box.
And we literally see this urge to systematize color everywhere online. Just think about how we constantly try to pack fluid, blending rainbows into strict digital cubes. Even on places like Wikipedia, colors are categorized in these rigid, totally objective alphabetical lists. You can scroll from the deep, icy blue of absolute zero all the way down to the reddish pink of amaranth. It's a beautifully logical way to organize information, for sure, but it really highlights our human need to impose order on a visual spectrum that is, by nature, borderless and entirely subjective.
But okay, the moment we step away from our glowing screens and into our physical reality, like the world of interior design, the whole paradigm completely shifts. Now we are painting with emotion. In our homes, a color isn't just data anymore. It's not a hex code processed by a microchip. It's a lived experience. It is literally the backdrop to our daily lives, our family dinners, our quiet Sunday mornings. Just choosing a different shade for a wall can fundamentally alter the entire atmosphere and energy of a room, transforming it from just a basic structure into a true sanctuary. There's this fantastic quote from Joa Studholm. She's the color curator for the British paint company Farrow & Ball, and I think it sums this up perfectly. She says the primary goal of using color is to foster environments where individuals feel proud and comfortable in their homes. Notice how totally different that is from our digital world. A web browser just needs to display data accurately. But humans, we use color to create a profound sense of belonging, warmth, and personal identity. And that brings us to the actual art of color naming. Brands like Farrow & Ball, they know that giving a paint a specific, quirky name adds layers of history and intrigue. It turns a simple, everyday pigment into a story. They've become legendary for this. They don't just sell you dark green or light gray. They use these bizarre, highly specific conversation-starting titles. Why? Because it turns a boring old bucket of colored liquid into a narrative you actually want to live inside. Take arsenic, for example. It's this vibrant verdigris green, and it playfully references the Napoleonic bee wallpaper that hung in Napoleon's bathroom during his exile in St. Helena. It ties directly into this crazy historical theory that he was actually poisoned by the arsenic pigment found in that very wallpaper.
I mean, just imagine painting your guest room with something named after a legendary emperor's fatal bathroom decor. Suddenly, it's not just green paint. It's a shade with a slightly dark, unforgettable, and totally captivating personality.
And hey, remember that dead salmon we talked about at the very start? It sounds literally insane for a high-end luxury interior paint, doesn't it? But its origin is wonderfully historical. It actually traces back to this super mundane 1805 painting bill for a library at a grand estate called Kedliston. The word dead simply meant a dead flat matte paint finish, and salmon was just the warm, peachy red tone of the color. Today, that totally mundane 19th century administrative record has birthed a truly iconic modern paint name. It just goes to show you, context is everything.
Or, oh, this is a good one, elephant's breath. It is this stunningly warm purple gray. Now, you might assume some clever marketing team just made that up yesterday to go viral on social media. But actually, scratch that. The phrase traces its origins all the way back to 1874. It was later heavily popularized by the influential 20th century English decorator John Fowler. Discovering that kind of trivia is just magic. It shows how these imaginative names have slowly evolved over centuries to describe these beautifully complex, hard-to-pin-down hues.
So, speaking of hard-to-pin-down hues, how are we actually using these emotive colors today? Well, in the interior design world right now, there is a massive, growing obsession with embracing what they call in-between shades. We're moving rapidly away from simple primary colors or those stark, blinding modern whites, and we're heavily gravitating toward colors that totally defy any easy categorization. Take Mizzle, for instance. It's this soft gray-green that literally gets its name from hazy weather, a mix of mist and drizzle. Then you've got Downpipe, which is a deep lead gray, but it has these incredibly complex blue undertones that completely change how it feels depending on where you stand in the room. And finally, Setting Plaster, a dusty, earthy pink that flatters a room like a historic, warm hug. Because these shades sit right between traditional color categories, they act as absolutely perfect chameleon-like backdrops. So why does all this matter for you and your own space? It's because physical colors literally breathe with the light. Think about the stark contrast here. Unlike static pixels permanently locked onto a monitor by a rigid hex code, these complex paint shades change beautifully throughout the course of a single day. A color like a soft green can look like a moody, shadowy brown while you're sipping your morning coffee, and then transform into a rich, vibrant, earthy green in the golden afternoon sun. They respond dynamically to the natural light flowing through your exact, unique environment. And this dynamic, lived-in vibe, it is exactly what is driving the broader color trends of tomorrow, specifically what we're seeing forecasted for 2025 and 2026. For the past decade, we saw a whole lot of stark, clinical, all-white minimalist spaces that, frankly, look like futuristic spaceships. But the pendulum is rapidly swinging back. Designers are noting this massive, enthusiastic shift towards spaces that feel deeply personal, richly expressive, and strongly rooted in nature. We're moving into these amazing muddy greens, like Farrow and Ball's reduced green, that feel incredibly aged and grounded. Then we have nocturnal blacks, like Valspar's Nevermore. And these aren't flat blacks. They're shades with deep violet or blue undertones, absolutely perfect for a cozy reading nook. We're also seeing the massive return of warm browns, like Benjamin Moore's Caponata, which are totally shedding their old dated reputation to bring real sophistication to dining rooms. And dusty pinks, like Fenwick and Tilbrook's Vintage Peony, are acting as the new warm neutral, finally replacing the cool grays of the 2010s. These are colors with real character. The big takeaway here is that we are absolutely craving earthy, grounded environments right now. Environments that offer us genuine comfort. I mean, after spending so much of our time in the digital world interacting with glaring screens and the absolute rigid precision of software, our brains just desperately need a break. We want our physical sanctuaries to feel organic, warm, and expressive. We want spaces that feel like a retreat, wrapped in colors that tell a living, breathing story instead of just displaying data. So it all comes back to that duality we started with. We really do live in two totally different worlds of color. On one side, we have our digital precision. It's objective, it's exact, and it is completely static, driven by those alphanumeric codes. But we balance all of that out with our physical need for emotional resonance. Colors that are subjective, wonderfully historical, and incredibly dynamic based on the light coming through our windows. Code dictates our screens, but emotion dictates our homes. To wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a little something to chew on as you look around your room right now. We've seen that a color is so much more than just a visual wavelength, right? It's the name, the rich history, and the profound feeling it evokes.
So tell me, if you had to invent a name for the exact color of your current mood, right now, at this very second, what would it be?